Hello, my name is Michelle Lane, and I am a proud company member of Celebration Theater Company. I am the producer of tonight's event. For those of you who are new to Celebration Theater Company, Celebration Theater is the oldest, continuously producing LGBTQ theater in the nation. And this week has been a special week celebrating Pride in Celebration Theater's first ever virtual theater festival in observance of Pride 2020. Beginning Monday and going through this Saturday, June 13th, we are producing one online event a day dedicated to celebrating pride, theater, music, and dance. We are proud to announce that each event is dedicated to a different cause that works to create change. Any donations received during today's event will be contributed directly to the Women's Center for Creative Work. The Women's Center for Creative Work, WCCW, is a Los Angeles-based intersectional feminist art space prioritizing women of color, queer, trans, and non-binary folks, and other marginalized communities. Donations help pay rent at their work center, support artists in residence, and continue to provide free and low-cost programming to their community. To make a donation to this amazing women's organization, please go to celebrationtheater.org and follow the links to donate. And now our host for the evening, Anne James. Anne is a queer Black theater artist and filmmaker. She has directed for the stage and is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, identifies as an intimacy director, and is committed to lifting the voices of the LGBTQIA+ community. Please help me welcome Anne James, along with our special guest today on the panel.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's such a pleasure to be here celebrating this wonderful film and also talking with some beautiful people about their feelings on the film. Okay, can everybody come into the space? Here they come. Here comes, yeah, okay. Hey, we're all here. Okay, make sure you turn your audio on so we can hear you. Michelle was right. I do identify as a queer Black woman. My pronouns are she, her. And I would like to say that, as a documentary filmmaker, the thing that is interesting to me is how the director of the documentary brings people out of their shells and out of themselves. So we're going to do that right now with our special guests. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, their name, pronoun, and something that is sparking joy or causing contemplation at this point in time. So, Madonna, you want to take it away?
Okay, you're starting with me. Thanks. Madonna Cacciatore, she, her, hers.
Cheers, by the way.
Cheers. I got permission for this. Something that is sparking joy for me is reuniting with my family who is watching this right now, and having so much in common, and just being part of the change that's happening in the world right now.
Thank you. Please continue.
My name is Robin, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. What was the questions? I'm sorry.
Oh, what is sparking your joy right now? What is giving you cause for contemplation?
The world gives contemplation, but let's stick with the joy because it's fun. I have to say, the way that we step into Pride, we are in Pride season, and we step into Pride in a whole new way, and we get to experience it around the world via being able to do this.
Very true. Very true. And what a powerful time to step into Pride, where Pride is, it seems like Pride is everywhere right now. And I'm so grateful for it, and I'm willing to fight for it. I'm willing to go to the mat for Pride right now.
Yeah.
So, Cristen, you're next on the list.
Hi, I'm Cristen Eastwood. I'm a cisgendered woman, and I will say this: it's hard to find joy to be sparked in the past few months, considering, but I am quite joyful about the change that has been affected by the recent protests and demonstrations. And It has, I mean, I'm seeing real change happening, you know, real legislation, real systematic, you know, the systems are changing, and it's not just lip service. Real changes are happening. We'll see how it plays out over the next, you know, but you know, rules and regulations are changing, and to me, that sparks the most joy.
Thank you for that. And Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Houston. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And in terms of what sparks joy right now is just the general resilience of people. We have come through some really dark times lately with this fear and pandemic lockdown and the horrible violence that we've witnessed, yet and still we keep rising up. And I just am loving what I see of the human spirit dominating right now. It's a good thing.
Yes, it seems like these times have called us to our most human selves, and they have called up the humanity in us outside of all the technology, outside of the Instagramming and the YouTubing and YouTube, but all of that technology has kind of moved to the wayside, and I do find people actually talking to one another and creating new relationships, even to people that they've known for a very long time. So I'll start with my first question. Number one, the film was amazing, and one of the themes in this film is family. Now, I happen to be a queer auntie, so I have two nieces, and I'm wondering if any of you have an older relative in your lives who kind of guided you toward, you know, through the rougher times of your life, or they were there to support you. Maybe you could talk a little bit about someone in your family, or maybe they're not DNA family, but someone who kind of helped you grow up while you were coming up into the world.
I had my great aunt was that person for me. I'd known her all of my life, but we didn't become really close until I was 22 and she was 103. And we began this amazing, hilarious, wonderful friendship where I believe through her laughter and through her just contrariness and her endless creativity, she taught me so much about relationship and what it means to commit and to love. She's gone on now. Obviously, I'm no longer 22.
You look it.
26.
But I remember spending time with her, brushing her hair. She had long, long white hair that went down. She could sit on it. And I remember those moments of brushing that hair and listening to her talk and her giving me life advice and her being, she had such a wicked sense of humor. I think she taught me how to laugh through just about anything, even when you might be also crying. And it was an important lesson. She was my mentor, my life mentor.
Well, here's to her. Here's to her.
Sure.
I know she speaks through you. You have such a wonderful energy, and you know, we are made of who we come from. Sometimes great, sometimes not so great. But let's talk about the great. Madonna, who has influenced you from your past and how you've developed into this dynamic being?
Well, I would have to say my mom. Terry in the film reminds me a lot of my mom, and I was taking care of her in her last years. There are so many things about her that remind me, and just really part of the reason I was crying was because of the relationship, but the other part was because of my mother. And And she was a sly little thing with a great sense of humor. And that one point where Terry says, "I'm looking at the camera," you know, where they're talking about that. I was like, that is my mom. She was a cut up. She used to always mess with people. But my family has since, you know, I came from a big Italian family, and my dad was also an influence, and my cousin and I just reconnected recently. And after I just turned 66, all these years. And so that reconnection of family has really opened me up in a way that my family's been gone for a while. My brother died of AIDS in 91, and my parents have been gone for a while. And so this sort of reconnection has sparked my connection to my mom and dad. And it's been really, really amazing.
So nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. And what about you, Robin?
I unfortunately haven't been blessed with that. So, yeah, I don't have anyone that I could actually test that to. So,
well, there's that lady next to you. Maybe that lady next to you.
I'm the old lady in her life for sure.
And Cristen, you look amazing. Cristen, what say you?
I didn't have a big family. I had a small family, very nuclear, very just the four of us. Relatives did not around, so I didn't have any relative connections. Any mentors or anything like that were very work related, and so I didn't have grandparents. They were all dead when I, by the time I was born. And so no, I did not have that, but I did. I didn't have that. I had myself and my experience in having that, and I'm trying to be one to my niece and nephew and my stepchildren. But that was one of the interesting things of the film, that the niece and Terry had this incredible relationship, and to me that really sparked my curiosity. Like, she goes, "My mother didn't raise me, Aunt Terry did." So I was dying to know what's up with this family, and this family really intrigued me, and what was going on with all of them. So, not everybody has this great, story of this aunt or this uncle or this neighbor or this magic person who just kind of, this Yoda, your personal Yoda who kind of, helps you take that hero's journey. So more inspiration to be one yourself.
More inspiration to be one yourself. You are self-raised, and I hold space for being a self-raised human. So that's remarkable and inspiring as well. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Thank you for raising yourself.
Thank you. It was not easy. She was a pain. She was a pain in the ass. And she still has issues, but I'm there for her, whatever she needs. But geez, she's constantly very needy, very all the time. So we're up all night.
I hear that. Okay, so now I can ask one of my favorite questions that I'm going to ask you, and maybe you'll say, nah, but I want to know everything you always knew about the Women's Baseball League. When did you find out about the Baseball League? Did you know about the Baseball League? Did it go into more depth? What are your feelings about that journey?
I heard about it in the movie. I had no idea. When I saw League of Their Own, I was like, holy crap. I knew that in the Negro Leagues, there was a girl named Tony. She played with Hank Aaron. I knew about that, but I didn't know that there was this whole league in World War II. League of Their Own came out kind of pre-internet or just in the early parts of the internet. I mean, you'd have to really search for that, and I'd never been to the baseball to Williamsport, or not Williamsport, but it is Williamsport. And so I don't know. I learned all about it then, and I was fascinated. I go, what other sports were there? Because really, for us, the only women's, we knew the Olympics, we knew professional golf and tennis, or we knew roller derby. And that was all the things that women did in sports. And, you know, I know Billie Jean King and you know, the history of women's sports, and there's a wonderful documentary about it, and how restricted women were to play anything because we thought it was going to, well, the reason was it was going to harm our womanhood and our ability to be fertile and to multiply. But it was more about the patriarchy just saying we don't want women to be strong and be able to, you know, do anything that's going to give them any kind of idea that they're going to, you know, get out from under that patriarchal thumb. So, and anyway, so yeah, that's when I heard about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing with, you know, the song in the musical, Annie, Get Your Gun. Anything you can do.
I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
Yeah. And so that I do feel, you know, kind of that suppression of women's agility and women's athletic ability that came through all that historical information about baseball. Anybody else were particularly shocked about the league or have anything to say about that?
For me, I thought it was all about softball as a lesbian when I was 10 years old, and I joined softball leagues, and softball was everything. I was a pitcher. I was like, I loved softball. I didn't understand that would, that pretty much everybody I was playing with was probably identifying the way I was at the time. But, I didn't know that there was a women's baseball league. And I didn't know that until A League of Their Own also. Like that, I started doing much more research about that after watching that film, because and then in the film, they showed, excerpts of like real life footage of the women. And that really intrigued me because I was always told, for me and at my age, it was women played softball, men played baseball. And so to have a women's baseball league was just exciting to me to discover that was actually a thing, but I never heard about it at the time, or before that time that the film came out.
And they were good.
They were really, they were fierce. Yeah. Cheers to that. Yeah, they were.
That. Oh,
hold on. They were amazing.
Cheers. Robin, what you think? Robin, do you play baseball? What do you do?
I don't do no sports. No.
No sports?
No whatsoever. No. I started running half marathons because of Madonna, and she bought me my first bicycle. So yeah, I don't do sports. And when we first started dating, I said, I don't do sports. So if you want to watch the game with the girls or the guys, go to a sport bar. Because I'm not one of those that I can't believe you'd rather go and watch the game than be with me. Oh no, seriously, go. Not my jam, never was. And so I never really thought about watching A League of Their Own. The thing that fascinated me out of that wasn't the fact that there was a women's league, but watching the real women come in going, oh, it's the real woman. Oh, good match.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the storyline itself, but it never really connected with me because I just was never a sports person. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That's clear. Boundaries. You have boundaries. Yeah. Okay.
It was quite a thing to strategy. If you were into sports, and, I was a Title IX kid, so I didn't get to play organized sports until 1972. And after Title IX happened, and then towns were forced to, because in my town, it was boys' little league, boys' football, and everything. The only sport I did was swimming.
And that a little bit about Title IX.
Yeah, well, Title IX was you're quizzing me if I can speak, but it basically said that there needs to be equal in athletics and anything in college and high school and whatever. You need to have, if you have a boys, you need to have a girls. There needs to be an equal counterpoint. And of course, the opponents of Title IX says, well, if we have to pay for girls softball, then we're going to have to get rid of, wrestling or whatever. And so there's always, I used to work on a sports show at HBO, and I was still getting anti-Title IX bull crap from these guys. I'm like, dude, come on. So what? So, but it meant that had to be equal. So then towns who were getting city money for whatever athletics they were having, the boys had to have something for girls. But here's the kicker: it's 1972, and I was playing ball for the boys all the time. I mean, I was playing all these things, but they thought to ease them into it, so they had us play t-ball. Now, if you don't know what t-ball is, it's a home plate with this rubber kind of tee, and it's adjustable, and you put a ball on top, and then you stand there and swing it. There's no pitching or anything. And now who plays t-ball are like 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. I hit 35 home runs at t-ball. Because I was 10 and I played ball and so forth, but they were, they were still, very tentative because, these girls aren't going to understand. They acted like we just crawled out of this cave. We'd never seen a baseball game. We'd never held a mitt or anything. And it was really interesting. For 1972, it was still pretty archaic, and then we've come a long way, baby. And thank God we had those. And, but it was something, and you hear more about Title IX now because of sexual harassment and assault and discrimination on campuses and so forth. But yeah, it's sports were very like I said. There's a wonderful documentary on HBO. I'm sure it's on one of the streaming services about women in sports and the history and how it got violent. When Catherine. What's her name ran in the Boston Marathon in 1968, and
they were mean.
And they tried to pull her off. They literally tried to pull her off the course. Yeah, I mean they assaulted her, and so
she signed up for the run by just using initials.
Yes, yeah, she got in that way, and so women had to do a lot of things. Babe Diedrichson, who was probably one of the greatest female athletes, she's up there with with Althea Gibson and Wilma Rudolph and all these. And one of her things, she actually kind of, drank the Kool-Aid and thought when she got cancer, she goes, I bet you I got cancer because I never had a baby and I played sports. And so there was a lot of internalized kind of self-hatred because you did this because we were so ingrained to say that sports were not for women. Mm-hmm. Women rode horses side saddle. How do you stay on a horse at a full gallop side saddle?
In a dress.
In a dress. I mean, there was just so many things, and you wonder why Smash the Patriarchy is a hashtag that I put on Twitter every day. But it's like, these things that we had to endure, and like the dresses, when they had to wear the dresses in the baseball league and they had to slide, and they tear their crap out of their skin.
Yeah.
It's like, you're kidding me. When they played that sound clip today, I never heard that sound clip. It goes, well, that bruise, that's better that than wearing pants, right, ladies? Are you kidding me? Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox. I'm just going to sit there.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm going to toss it to you, Diane. I'm just going to say that wasn't it interesting that Title IX in 1972 was butted right up against Shirley Chisholm running for president. We have this whole dichotomy of what America is and what America means for women happening right there in that time period. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Diane, if you can reflect on any of that and what your feelings would be toward women's equality, and if you had any experiences through that for women's rights.
Well, we've all had experiences just by virtue of being women, out here. In 1972, I was completely involved I was in theater. And so I was in theater deep over my head in theater. I think at that time I had my first acting gig in New York. It was a very avant-garde thing. I got a chance to work with some great, strange people. And so at that point in my life, although of course I was aware of what was happening politically, I was of a belief that I had found something that could transcend politics and that could transcend, that art would be able to change the world. So I was still innocent in some ways, in 72. And I think it took me a while actually to understand what part of the shit I got for being a woman, and what part of the shit I got for being Black, and what part of the shit I got for, it was just shit. Do you know?
Yeah.
You know? After a point, you stop figuring, you know, it's just like, okay, all of this has to go, you know, and then you awaken to your radical self and understand that all of this must change,
Yeah.
you know, and then for me, it becoming a part of many, many different voices for change, because change had to happen all over the place. You can't leave shit somewhere and think that it's clean. It all has to go. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Well, yeah, 100%. 100% it does.
Okay.
So in the movie, going back to kind of some of the themes in the film, one of the more intriguing instances in the film was these lesbian women as a couple moving into a time in their lives where they needed care, extra care. And I'm just wondering if any of you know of any resources or programs out there, either in LA or national programs, that are helping lesbian women, bi women, the whole community with this idea of aging and how we can support that rite of passage with dignity. Does anyone have anything to offer there?
Well, I used to work at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, and of course,
I kind of lobbed it to you.
well, I just took the ball without looking at you, Anne. So, but it's right up the street there from the Celebration Theater, and they just built a multi-million-dollar campus for seniors and youth to have care, LGBTQ seniors and youth to have care, and for them to work together, for the seniors to pass on the legacy and for the youth to learn. And it's pretty brilliant. It's a great resource. There's Triangle Square, which is on Ivar. You know, I think that may have a waiting list, but there's going to be senior housing at the center very soon. And, you know, when I was working there, I was most moved by the people who really wanted to help, you know, because many of these people lost, if those two weren't married or they didn't have family in the movie, they would be completely alone and have lost everything. Everything they knew, every part of their home, every dollar they had. And some of these seniors are trying to determine whether they can have their prescriptions or toilet paper. I mean, that's how low income and sort of left they are, you know, without family or anybody to really help them. And so there's so many wonderful stories about how the center has helped people through those times, and helped them also to find community in, you know, where in their life and where they live, and whether they live at senior housing or not, they can find community through the bingo or through the games or through the meals that they have together. So that's one resource that I know of very well, but I'm sure there are others. But it's, you know, that's to me what was most moving about the film. I have a real soft spot in my heart. I always have, even when I was a kid, for my elders. And so watching them age and not knowing, you know, watching them sort of look into each other's eyes. And you saw those moments where I don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have our home tomorrow. And then when they were moving out of their home, that was really, really moving and hard for me, because I had to do that with my parents, because they couldn't stay where they were. Otherwise, they just would have no care. So it's also very expensive, as was pointed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
expensive it was. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that gay elders have a very, and I think, you know, as our generations progress, it's going to change. But, you know, one of the things that traditionally has always been part of elder care is the children. And so the children are there to take care of the parents and help manage their affairs and whatnot. And, you know, this current generation of elders who are, you know, in their 70s or 80s, there's probably a smaller percentage that had children. And so then they're left to somehow figure out, or, a lot of pre-planning if they're even coupled. Anyone who was estranged from their family, they probably don't know nieces or nephews or anybody. So there's probably a good percentage, particularly of the generation that's now in their 70s and 80s. They're the age generation. They're the survivors. So, they've lost lots of people. So it's, I think, as our generations progress, we're going to be able to be more, quote unquote, in the heteronormative, where the kids are going to take care of the parents. But there is SAGE USA, which is a nationwide senior group started in New York at the New York Center. And they have a huge amount of resources. There are LGBT senior communities springing up all over the nation, Florida. Oddly enough, in states like Arkansas and, low tax states, Nevada, Palm Springs right here, and of course the Triangle Square and so forth. There's a lot more out there. But as we all know, housing and long-term senior care is across the board an issue, gay or straight. And I think for our community particularly, nobody wants to, and when Terry and Pat were discussing, moving into that place, they don't want to move in someplace where they're going to get shit from anybody for being gay. They're too old to be, they've been through the mill. I don't need to have my dying days spent with, somebody tipping over my wheelchair, spitting into my pudding. And,
right.
And so, we, as homos, we've had to work a little harder. We do a lot more pre-planning for everything we do because we don't know what it's going to be like when we get there. Like I said, SAGE USA is a great resource. The center, every center has a group for seniors, and I'm all for buying a field and building a bunch of teepees or whatever. I'm all for women's land have been doing this for years and have been setting up. I went to the one in Mississippi where there are all sorts of communities and cooperative communities and so forth. And it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to live the twilight of your years. And Golden Girls worked. It worked. And you can put a bunch of lesbians in a house, and everybody will get along. Shit'll get done. And I think communal living and the European style of taking care of your whatever. I think it's there. So
I also think that one thing we don't consider is people's animals, and
yes.
For example, one of the women in the senior living, and I'm a big old vegan animal lover. I rescue everything. Ask her. There's 5 cats around us right now, and my cousin's farm in Arizona. They have rescue animals that have come from horrific conditions, and it's basically like we talked to a woman at the senior center at the center a few years ago, and she was sitting there with her 2 cats, and she said, it's not really what's going to happen to my babies when I'm gone, or if I can't take care of them anymore. And I think that's something that we don't even think about as part of the whole picture. Sometimes that's all they have from the relationship, from their marriage, from their dog or their cat or somebody, and that's really something that they can care for even after their mate may have passed. And so that's just something that it's been occurring to me as you were talking. Like, I want the community to have everybody there. I want to take care of them, their animals, their food. I don't want them to have to question how they're going to eat tomorrow.
Yes, I agree. I just wrote down, it was such an epiphany hearing you talk about the pets of the elderly. I mean, I just didn't even think of that extra layer of, caring for their children at that point, and just the deep love that they have and concern for the fact that they'll be cared for. That's really special. Speaking of living, I want to know about cohabitation of lesbians. So my question here is, what has been your experience when you've decided to live with a partner openly? How was the apartment or house hunting experience? And how did you first know it was home? So let's unpack that. Did any of you have an issue with it, whether you're single or not, at a point where you were living with a partner? How was the searching for that apartment? You know, the women in the film, people, you know, they said they were cousins, you know, they lived together forever and they were never out when it came to their living situation. So I'm just wondering how that kind of rolled down the hill for all of you, cohabitation.
Hmm. Well,
Were there any instances where, yeah, go ahead, Diane.
I my wife and I have been together for 26 years. We've owned 3 houses, and I I cannot remember any. I mean, buying a house is not a, you know, it's not a walk in the park, but I don't remember anything particularly standing out that had to do, it was derivative of us being 2 women. We didn't have that experience.
Okay. And so when you were you got all the boxes in, or was it when you sat on your couch the first time in your first owned home? What was that feeling like when you were finally settled in?
Well, I got to tell you, for me, and I don't know that this will answer your question really, but home for me was finding her.
Hmm.
And after that, the rest of it didn't matter.
Don't make me cry.
Yes, ma'am.
Fair, not fair.
True. It's true. That's when I knew I was home.
Wow. Wow.
I tell you, you know, because you know, I moved in with like it's like the second or third date, so we were living together by then. And I will say that my wife and I, we've been together be 17 years and 2 weeks. Um, she was a new lesbian when I met her, like not out at all, very, very like and she's a midlife changer, you know, that kind of lesbian. I don't know, we got to name that. And I had been a very out activist I mean, I was out. I'd been on national television. I mean, I was out. And she lived out in, you know, Ventura County, and I'm living in Hollywood doing my thing. And we got together. I had to go kind of back in the closet, which was when I was out with her. I had to dial everything back. I didn't wear my gay garb. I just dialed it back. You know, the kids didn't find out till a month. There was kids. There's 2 teenagers, and so it was a lot of just tiptoeing around things, and it got hard because, you know, I don't know if you know those communities, but I had to really be a different person when I was with her in public out where she lived, as opposed to how I was normally, as being very out. And it was difficult. It was worth it, but you know, I don't know if everyone appreciates the sacrifice I'd made, but it was hard because, you know, it went against what I believed. And but she asked me to do that, and I did it. And what's the point of that? You know, there are things you do. I mean, we all do those little micro closets. You know, we don't hold hands when we're around certain people, certain types of people, usually groups of men who would like to give you crap. And you know, there's those things you do. But when you are finally living together and you're alone, like we have a house now, and it's pretty heavenly. And
yeah, I started with the U-Haul. I like dated and moved in with my first girlfriend in 1973. We called ourselves roommates. you know, I didn't call her my cousin. Like, we just were like, we're just roommates. But it was, you know, hiding behind that for many, many years until I did come out very quickly after that, because I decided I didn't want to live in hiding. And she did too. I mean, we were pretty open, but it took, you know, it depended who we were talking to. Of course, if we were out at bars, we were who we were. But if we were, you know, just in some like, you know, other situation where it wasn't comfortable or we felt like we could be in jeopardy, we would call ourselves roommates.
Yep.
You have that situation too.
Yeah. My ex and I, no one knew we were in a relationship at all. No one. I mean, barely.
Wow.
So, but then when we started dating, everything changed. I could, you know, be loud and obnoxious like I always was about who I was with. I've never been one to hide except for that one time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I can't thank you enough. We're almost at the end here of our time together. It goes so fast.
So fast. I barely drank any of this. So I guess I'll do it out.
Oh, let's have a sip. Oh, okay.
Right.
So I just want to thank you so much. But before we go, I want to ask you if you have any last thoughts that the film kind of brought up for you. If there's anything else that you were thinking that I didn't ask and you want to share, please feel free to take the floor and do that.
For me, that film just brought me back to my heart and soul. In this time that's just so incredibly chaotic, there's a real calm in being with people like all of you and watching that kind of filmmaking where they're just taking you back to your heart and your soul. And really, it's about when they look in each other's eyes, that's everything you need to know about how we should really be treating each other. So yeah, it made me emotional.
Wise words. It's so true. It's so true.
I think just how brave they were to, you know, and women I think have a little more leeway to be roommates than men do. And so they have a little bit more privilege, female privilege, to live with a woman for 65 years. I do not buy that the families had no idea. I don't buy that. The film was made by the grandnephew of Terry. I feel like I cannot fathom that they had no idea. But that said, the other thought that I had was, when you're aging and your mobility is becoming limited and all this kind of stuff, what really struck me, particularly for Pat, the loss of control and the controlling her life, and the fact that I felt like Terry's family was kind of just circling the wagons, and I felt like Pat in some way felt like they're going to, one of the greatest fears, especially, that they're going to take her away and leave you dry. And I'm glad to say I did some research following that it's not the case. But because Terry had this family and Pat didn't. And she built a family with Terry.
Right.
But here we are at the end. I mean, this was a huge story during AIDS, where long-term couples, and then one would die, and the blood family would swoop in and we saw that in If These Walls Could Talk Too, with the one with Marion Seldes and Vanessa Redgrave. And so even though they've been together, 70 years, those fears are still there that someone's going to come and rip you apart because you are not a man and a woman. And I think that too played out, because if Pat would have been a man, and it would have been Pat and Terry, I don't think, and this is just my instant reaction, that the family would have felt, especially Diana, would have felt that she could be as, I'm trying to think of the word I'm thinking about, but that she could be so heavy-handed with, this is what I want to do and I want to help you. If Pat had been the husband, I think they would have been more deferential to him because of just, you know, good old fashioned deferential to men. And I think because she was a woman, they felt they could kind of go in there. So I saw that dynamic playing as well. I got a little weird because I thought, oh, they just wanted $1 million. They're like, I can't wait to get that $1 million. But I watched too much Lifetime. So, yeah, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, you know, I buried elderly parents, had to take care of them. So triggers galore. And in this pandemic, you know, I mean, I'm watching anything about people at end of life in the middle of a pandemic. How is that not going to trigger the crap out of us? Absolutely. So it brought up a lot of stuff. And, but apparently $1 million and you're good. So if you're 90 and have $1 million in the bank, you're okay. But $1 million now is probably not going to get you into next year. So, but yeah, a lot of stuff. Watch with a friend and discuss it because it's really a lot of triggers.
Thank you for that. Diane?
You know, I think there was so much with that film, so much beauty and so much sadness. I mean, it sounds like an oversimplification to say it, but it's like, especially as they got on and on and on in years and with health problems. I mean, if you're in a relationship, every day is sacred, you know, and it just is. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, no matter if you're having, you know, a crappy day or what, you have that day, you know, and you don't get that day back.
That's true. Thank you. You're like the sage of this group, and I love that.
We're all in trouble.
Well, ladies, thank you so very, very much for joining us. Before we go, I'd like to thank Celebration Theater. I would like to thank the City of WeHo. I would also like to thank Michael Shepard and Chris Makish, Tom DeTrinis, Nathan Frizzell, Michelle, Gina, amazing support and introduction and producing for this event. And before you go, you can, if you're watching and you'd like to make a donation to the Women's Center Creative Work, you can go to www.womenscenterforcreativework.com. They couldn't make it any easier for you folks. Okay, thank you so much. Here's to you. Have a great summer season coming up, and I hope I get to see you all again.
Happy Pride. Thank you. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. Oh, we've got so many more events for Pride coming up. So stay tuned. Go to celebrationtheatre.re.com. Theater, THEATRE.org. Sorry. But thank you all so much. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.